Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's Master Your Migraine webinar. I'm so grateful that you're here tonight and I really hope that you learned something new. And if you suffer with migraine, or if you know someone who suffers with migraine, continue to watch this, or if not, share it with someone that you know and love. So in today's workshop, I'll be hopefully providing you with knowledge to help manage and alleviate the migraine. All right, I'm just going to share my screen. All right, welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Cindy Lamb, and I'm a chiropractor here at Prevolution Health, practice here in chiropractic practice in Queanbeyan, and we love supporting people with their health, bringing back the quality of life. And today's webinar, we're specifically talking on migraine. The reason why I'm doing tonight's workshop and I've been providing educational material this month is because in the world, not just Australia, it is Migraine Awareness Month in June. But the theme for this year, though, is Out of the Dark. And the reason why Out of the Dark is the theme is because migraine is often perceived as just a bad headache, but the research has now shown that it's not just a headache. And unfortunately, in times, migraine hasn't been considered as part of being considered a real condition and disorder in some scenarios. And so by raising awareness, it would empower people and for people such as employers and others to understand people who are suffering with migraine. But most importantly, though, it is really for you to learn something about migraine today. In today's workshop, I'll be covering a couple of topics. First off, we'll start by talking about what exactly is migraine. And I'll then talk into what are the phases of migraine and the signs and symptoms that you would commonly see in migraine, those phases. Then I'm going to talk about what are the types of migraines and the theories that are out there. And then we'll talk about causes of migraine, which is the triggers. Then last but not least, then I'll be finishing off talking about how chiropractic care helps with migraine, but also most importantly, what can you do at your own, in your own life, at your own time, and you can start implementing starting from tomorrow of how you can self-manage your migraine. Alrighty, so what is a migraine? The thing is, I've got 3 definitions here, and it's because there are many definitions out there. Just depends on how complex or basic you want to get into. But really, what a migraine is it's a recurrent throbbing headache that really mostly affects one side of the head, and it's often accompanied with the main symptoms of nauseousness and having changes in vision. But we know it's not just a throbbing headache, it's much more than a bad headache, and it's actually a neurological disorder. And other symptoms that you can have it with instead of just the throbbing and nauseousness and disturbed vision is the pulsating pain as well. If you want to get a little bit more detailed, but at the same time still on a basic level, even though migraine is a complex neurological disorder, it's actually, if you break it down, it's a type of sensory processing disorder, and part of the reason is it's caused by having changes and variations in the genetic code of the brain. And essentially, it makes the networks of the brain more hyperexcitable. And so the research has found that people who have a migraine brain, the ions in the brain work faster and the brain has more shortcuts. And because it has more shortcuts, then it's easier for the brain to become overloaded. And then that's what leads to a migraine attack. All right. Phases of migraine. So in a migraine, there are 6 main phases. The first phase is the premonitory phase. And this is essentially the phase when you start to get warning symptoms and that the migraine attack is just really about to start. Some of the symptoms that you might start to experience at first is you might be yawning a bit, you might have changes in your mood, you might be craving certain foods, you might feel maybe a bit nauseous or a bit achy and stiff in your body. And you might even have changes through your speech as well. In this particular phase of migraine, the premonitory phase, if you're someone who takes the wafer, this is the phase that you want to be taking that wafer. The second phase is the aura phase. This is when things start to get a little bit worse and the migraine attack really officially starts to begin. With an aura, only about 1/3 of people experience it, but it is quite a well-known phase in people who experience aura. So with the aura phase, people that tend to get more visual disturbances. They might even have weakness or numbness. They might get a bit confused. And this is when you especially have more dizziness and vomiting involved. The third phase of migraine is the acute phase. This is also known as the headache phase because some people can get a headache, neck pain as well. The nauseousness and vomiting also starts to come a bit more, and especially the sensitivity to light, sound, and smell can be quite prominent, especially sensitivity to light, which does tie in with the theme for the year, which is out of dark, because we don't want people sitting in dark rooms with migraine. We want people to be taking control of their life and their health and really getting to the bottom of the migraine. So getting to the bottom of the migraine, so the fourth phase is the resolution phase, and this is when the migraine attacks can sometimes just suddenly stop, right? There will be a sudden finish, and then that's when people start to feel like they really need to sleep, or on the flip side, they might feel really, really good and feel even euphoric. The fifth phase of migraine is post-drome. This is also known as the migraine hangover phase. And this is when, like, similarly to the resolution phase, you might feel really down and depressed, or you might feel really happy. But like a hangover though, this is when you get really fatigued and tiredness, and you'll have a bit of brain fog, and it'll be a bit hard to comprehend things and speak as well. The last phase is the sixth phase, and the best phase of all. It is the interruptal phase, and it's the best phase of migraine is because you essentially have no more signs or symptoms at all. It's just essentially the waiting phase up until when the next migraine will be. All right, so types of migraines and theories. There are actually a number of models out there, and in this session, I'm only going to be covering the most common ones. So there is 8 in total. So the first and most common theory that I want to talk about is essentially the medical model. And the medical model of migraine attack is neurovascular. And this is essentially when ions in your brain channels goes too fast, then the valves that regulate those channels, they get stuck open, and then your brain overheats. So what happens is the pain nerves in your head and your neck, they get irritated, and then the blood vessels in the head spasm up, which then leads to inflammation in parts of the brain. So you might find that if you have neurovascular migraine, you have that really tension. It starts off with a tension headache on the side, and then it progresses. Another medical model is the trigeminal vascular reflex. And trigeminal is a nerve it's one of the 12 nerves on the brain. It is the 5th nerve, and what essentially happens in this model is that when there's an activation of its sensory afferent nerves to the blood vessels, it then releases vasoactive peptides from the terminals, which leads to inflammation, and it leads to inflammation, and then it would result in vasodilation, which is when the blood vessels get a little bit bigger. Yeah. All right. So the next models of theories are more the common things that I see in practice as a chiropractor. So with the structural, in the structural theory, it's essentially when there's a change in curve and it's a change in posture. So with your spine, when you're looking at it from the front on, you want your spine to be completely straight, just nice and straight. If your spine is curving, you've got scoliosis. Your spine from the side, though, however, you do want to see curves. So from the side of your neck, you should see a curve coming in like so. And then for your mid-back, the curve comes out, and then the curve in your low back comes in again, once again, just like the neck. So the neck is what we call lordosis, mid-back, kyphosis, low back, lordosis. The thing is, though, because our eyes are in front of our face, and we're doing so many things forward, especially these days with this whole technic phenomena of holding the phones, looking down, our head is going forward. And so with this forward head carriage, that means that there's more weight that's put onto your head, leading to a structural migraine attack. Sympathetic dominance. Sympathetic dominance is also known as a migraine attack. And so before I can explain what exactly is sympathetic dominance, I think it's important that I explain a little bit of theory about our autonomic nervous system. And so autonomic meaning, you know, all these things happen automatically. So in our autonomic nervous systems, we have two systems. We have our parasympathetic nervous system, which you can see here on the left, and then you have the sympathetic nervous system on the right. So parasympathetic is your rest, digest, relax, and healing. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. It's when you're essentially in a state of stress. So for example, if you look at the first organ here, the eyes, so when you're stressed, your eyes are dilated, and then when you're relaxed, then it's more likely to then constrict. So essentially, when one is on, the other's off. One's on, the other's off, and essentially, you want to have a good balance. But the thing is, when you are in too much stress, your sympathetic nervous system is dominated, then it can lead to nervous system imbalance. Your body's out of balance, and then it can lead to a migraine attack. The next possible theory is the neurodegenerative change theory. So similarly to, as I was saying earlier, with the spine, we can have degeneration through the spine, but equally in saying that you can have degeneration of the brain as well. And so when the brain has changes and degenerates, then there will be a lack of blood supply to the brain. And when there's a lack of blood supply, similarly to like when there's imbalance of the nervous system, it will cause dysregulation of the nervous system. And you might particularly see this in older people. So you might see someone who's old, but not too old, and you might find that they might be constantly having a headache, and they just like always, they've lost the structural degeneration in the first place, and they just head forward and just always holding their head. But what you don't know is that's actually leading to changes in the brain as well, and even possible migraine attacks later on, but change in function of the brain. So here I have included a photo. It's a brain scan. We can see in our normal brain, it's very bright, isn't it? And then when you start to have some mild degeneration, you have mild cognitive impairment, then the rainbow color starts to decrease, and it starts to get a little bit darker. And then it's when in an Alzheimer's brain, that's when there's a lot more neurodegeneration, and you see there's more darkness than there is brightness. And essentially, this brightness is a reflection of life. All right, the sixth theory is cranial dysfunction. So this is when there's changes in cerebral spinal fluid, also known as, we just call it CSF for short. And if there's changes in CSF, there will be changes in and decrease in nutritional supply to the brain. This is because the CSF has two roles. So first of all, the CSF is fluid, by the way, that's in the brain, on top of the brain, and essentially it acts as a cushioning and shock absorber for the brain so that it doesn't hurt itself when you hurt your head, as well as it supplies nutrition to the brain, and it also removes away toxins. So if you have changes in CSF, then you will have less oxygen and less good nutritional supply to the brain, which can lead to not only migraine, but also headaches as well. We can see here that with the arrows, we can see the flow in which it takes and how it travels through all these ventricles of the brain, and it goes up and down, back and forth, up into the brain and down into the spinal cord. Yeah. As I was saying earlier, so post-concussion syndrome, as I was saying earlier about how CSF acts as a shock absorber for the brain, we can see that when someone has constant or even just one big head injury or trauma, they can lead to changes in the brain structure and function. There's been a growing body of research papers out there talking about rugby players, a lot of American research talking about NFL players, professional NFL players who are now experiencing earlier signs of the neurodegenerative conditions such as Alzheimer's, but also changes in the brain, including migraines as well. Alrighty. The last theory is the vertebral subluxation theory. And as a chiropractor, this is what I work with mostly. And this is when there's interference to the spine and the nervous system, there will be changes and interference to what the nervous system is meant to do, which is the 3 principles of self-healing, self-regulating, and self-organizing. So as I was saying earlier about how we have the brainstem, and the spinal cord that comes down in that previous photo, what essentially that is the superhighway for your body to communicate with the brain, all those nerves that come out. Now, when there's a subluxation and there's lack of coherence and mobility through, then it can interfere with the communication pathway. I'll explain that a little bit in greater detail in a moment. All right. So what can cause migraines? The word we use is trigger, and it's because trigger is essentially what leads to the migraine attack. So one is hormonal changes. This mostly applies to females, especially when there's changes to the estrogen and progesterone levels, particularly about a week, leading up to a week before of their menstrual cycle. And it's especially certain stresses can exacerbate the changes in hormones as well that can lead to migraine. Number 2 is changes in routine. So I often see my patients with migraine. They often get either a Saturday migraine or Monday migraine. And this is often because they are coming out or coming into school or work. And so when there's a change in routine, the body and the brain has to now adapt, but because it's a bit struggling a little bit, it can also once again lead to and trigger a migraine attack. Number 3 is exercise. So this is an interesting one. It's similar to sleep. It's either too much exercise or too little exercise, because what exercise does is, well, it pumps your heart, gets your blood flowing, and with the new blood, you have new oxygen. And so with exercise, there is a fine line, but the exercise, it can be a trigger for migraine attack. Sleep is so important because when you're sleeping, you get your parasympathetic nervous system activated. And in today's society, it's a fast-paced world. A lot of people are quite stressed and sympathetically dominant, and they're not getting enough sleep. So with sleep, if you're having not enough sleep, then you're going to be too stressed. You can be too stressed, and that can also lead to a migraine attack. Number 5 is food. So food is quite a common trigger for people. I'll talk in a moment later about what you can do if that is a trigger. So with food, it can be things ranging from chocolate or wine or pumpkin, I've even heard of, or carrots. It can be anything really, but it's all individual. It's best for you to find out if food is a trigger, and if so, what it is. Another common trigger is water. So water, as you know, our body is made up of water. We need water to do all our bodily functions, and our cells really need it. And so what happens is when we're dehydrated, there is a change in CSF flow as well. And when your body is dehydrated, it means that other organs and cells have to work just a little bit harder. And the similar concept applies to caffeine. So because caffeine is a diuretic, it will therefore take away your water consumption, and therefore you'll be once again dehydrated. So if you really, really have to drink coffee, keep it to the minimal. And if you do drink coffee, you have to have so much more water. You have to have so much water to make up for it. Yeah. All right. Environment is a common trigger as well. So in the environment, it can range from a variety of things. It can be the weather. When there's a barometric change of weather and humidity, or if it's too hot, it can lead to dehydration as well. It can even be light. It can be certain smells as well, and even chemicals, smokes, fumes. All these environmental stress can certainly play a role. I purposely saved stress last because stress is the most common and biggest trigger of all migraine. And to some extent, stress, it is the definition for 1 to 8, because in chiropractic especially, we define stress as the 3 T's. So we have thoughts, toxins, trauma. Thoughts being your emotional stress, toxins being your chemical stress, and trauma being your physical stress. So with the 3 T's and the stresses, this is what leads to subluxation, which is I was saying earlier, which is when there's interference to the communication between the brain and the body. When this occurs and you have a migraine, this therefore places you in what we call a dyshyphanese cycle. So the hyphen is there on purpose, because when you have a migraine, you're obviously not at ease, right? It's not exactly comfortable. But in saying that, it's not quite a disease either. And so therefore, you're in a state of dyshyphanese, when something's not right, but something's not wrong either. So therefore, when you get adjusted, actually, you remove the subluxation. The adjustment removes the subluxation, and it pushes you towards a greater state of ease. A really good way of explaining chiropractic and the stress is by showing you this safety pin cycle. So what it is in a healthy nervous system, you have a brain and body that's connected because there's no subluxation. So the body is in alignment, it has normal function, and it's a state of ease. However, when there is subluxation present, then the brain and body is disconnected, and it's because therefore there's misalignment, and there's abnormal and malfunction, and in a state of dyshyphanese. Sometimes in the practice, I even show my patients this with a physical pin. It's really a great physical demonstration of what exactly I'm talking about. So essentially, long story short, your nerves carry messages between your brain and the body, and your nervous system, your brain controls everything. So it's so important that you make sure that your brain and body is connected by getting adjusted. It's one thing for me to talk about. I can go on and on about how amazing chiropractic is, how chiropractic helps with people suffer with migraine and headaches, and I can even tell you testimonies. I can introduce you to patients who have benefited greatly, but at the end of the day, the research speaks for itself. And so in this slide here, I've included 4 really good studies for you to have a read through. If you don't want to read the whole paper, you can always read the abstract, but they really show that there's a growing body of evidence and getting stronger and stronger of linking between the benefits of spinal manipulation, chiropractic adjustments, and migraine as well. So feel free to take out your phone and take a photo of this slide, or even take a screenshot. Alrighty, up to the good part. So how can you actually manage your migraine? So there are many, many things out there that you can do to help with your migraines and headaches. And I'm sure if you suffer with headaches and migraine, then you've probably tried lots and lots of things. And one of the things is medication. And it's out of my scope of care. I'm not exactly a doctor in a position to be prescribing pharmaceutical medications. But to be honest with you, there's this, I don't really believe in treating the effect, but rather addressing the cause. I think addressing the root cause is most important, because that's how you can really get to the bottom of things and keep it good for good. So I want to share with you a quote from the founder and developer of chiropractic, BJ Palmer. And the quote goes, "The preservation of health is easier than the cure of disease." All right, so the first thing that you can do to help with managing your migraine is by keeping a diagnostic diary. You can do this traditionally, like on pen and paper, or what I've got here for you, I would love to recommend, is the Migraine Buddy app. It's an app you can download on your phone. It's unfortunately not free, but I really truly believe if you do suffer with migraine, it is a worthy investment. So with the Migraine Buddy app, or with the diagnostic migraine diary, what it allows you to do is keep track of how often your migraines are occurring, what kind of symptoms you're starting to get, what symptoms does it lead onto, how long does it last for, and then you can track down what are your possible triggers, where were you in the day, how are you feeling in the day, what did you eat, or did anything change? And then you can track as well, what did you do to help settle down the migraine? And you can start to see a pattern of what helped, what didn't help, and just get the big idea of what's going on. And it can really help not just you, but your practitioner in managing your migraine as well. But in addition to keeping a diagnostic migraine diary, there are 10 other really important lifestyle changes that you can do and easily implement into your life starting from either tonight or tomorrow morning to help with managing your migraine. So the first is you want to establish a routine and stick to it. This is particularly important if your trigger is if there's a change in routine. When there's because your migraine brain already has lots of shortcuts, it can more easily be overheated and lead to a migraine attack. And so therefore you want to keep your body at ease by ensuring you have a good routine and that it doesn't get too confused and overloaded. The second thing you can do is you want to eat about 5 to 6 smaller meals rather than eating 3 big meals. And the reason for this is because when you eat a meal, your parasympathetic nervous system has to work and it has to digest the food. But as I was saying earlier, in today's time, where people are often stressed, people are now scoffing down their lunch meals or eating while standing or eating and multitasking and not slowly eating. And therefore, if that's the case, if you have eating a big meal, it's quite a lot of work for your parasympathetic nervous system to digest. And then if you rush it, then you'll leave some foods undigested and it can lead to digestive issues. So rather you can try eating smaller meals so that you're putting less pressure onto your nervous system in digestion. Thirdly, you want to increase your water intake. You want to really stay hydrated because your body is made up of water. I didn't exactly write it down here, but in saying that, I'll also limit caffeinated drinks, diuretic drinks that will lead to dehydration as well. And you also want to limit alcohol as well. Fourthly, you want to spend less time on electronic devices. This is because a lot of electronic devices these days have blue light, and what blue light does is it creates a lot of stimulation onto the brain. And so it can trigger and lead to a migraine attack. And so therefore, it's obviously best to spend less time on your electronic devices, but if you really have to use it, what you can do is get glasses that have a blue light anti-glare, or even if you don't wear prescription glasses, you can still wear those and it will help filter and just reduce the stimulation onto your brain with the blue light. But otherwise, if you do wear prescription glasses, you can simply ask your optometrist to add on the filter. It doesn't cost very much, but it will make a big difference in the stimulation. Also, with the phones at night, it's obviously best to not use the phones at least an hour before going to bed. But later in the evening, what you can do on your phone is set up for the phone to automatically change to a darker mode, and even sometimes low battery mode has a bit of a darker shade, so the stimulation isn't as high. So that can really help as well. Fifthly, you want to spend more time in nature, because it's so often that we're cooped up inside, we're using on electronic devices, and being in nature really allows us to stay grounded, have fresh air and oxygen, and it's absolutely really refreshing. And not only being outdoors in nature, it can help with stress as well, but it just really allows you to, it's an opportunity for you to connect with either yourself or with your loved ones. Number 6, you want to create a better work-life balance. You don't want to be under a lot of stress, because if you're sympathetically dominant, your body isn't going to be able to heal. And healing isn't just necessarily for the concept of maybe a migraine, but healing at any level of capacity. Number 7, you want to exercise regularly. You want to do at least 30 minutes of moderate, vigorous exercise a day to really get your heart pumping. And when the heart pumps, you send oxygen to the brain so that you're nice and well regulated, and you're really preventing neurodegenerative changes through to the brain. Number 8, you want to get to bed early and ensure you get enough sleep. If you have too little sleep, I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it before. If you're really tired and haven't had enough sleep, you're going to get a headache. And sometimes that headache can be very bad and even be like a migraine. So sleep is so important. It really allows your parasympathetic nervous system to activate. Number 9, like as I was going on about parasympathetic, you want to practice some level of relaxation, whether it is going outdoors and going for a walk, or practicing yoga, or what I would recommend is try breath work. There are lots of breath work guides on YouTube that you can simply search up. I really like that you can help support you, but at the end of the day, the reason why I like to recommend breathwork is because you can be anywhere in the world, anywhere and in your environment, and you don't need anything. You just need yourself, your breath, and connect to it. Number 10, you want to do an elimination diet. This is particularly important if food is what's triggering your migraine. So with an elimination diet, you want to be doing this for at least 23 to 26 days. And this is because this is how long it takes for the cycle of the proteins for the inflammation in your body to really reduce and flush out. So you have to do it for a minimum of 26 days. And with an elimination diet, what you want to eliminate to be some of the main categories of what you want to eliminate is gluten, being wheat, dairy, eggs, sugar, soy. Am I missing anything? And caffeinated and alcohol, caffeinated drinks and alcohol. So reducing all of that, I know it's really hard, but it'll be worth it. And it's not forever. It's just at least for about 26 days. And then what you want to do is slowly reintroduce one thing at a time. And reintroduce it for about a week, and you want to observe the changes throughout your body, and in this case your migraine. And so if it's all good, then you can keep it and then add something else. Doesn't work, minus it out, go on to the next one, and going back and forth and figuring out the levels of what is your body more sensitive to. And then that's when you find the balance and you find what exactly are your food triggers. So with an elimination diet, in saying that, you do have to track what you're eating. At our practice here, we do have a lifestyle and food diary that you can use to write down a bit about your day. So when you're waking up, how you're feeling during the day, whatever you're eating and drinking, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, fats, oils, condiments. Then you want to write what are you doing for exercise, relaxation, and when you're going to bed. So it's an all-rounder lifestyle journal. So if you are interested in that, feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to share that with you. Alrighty, so I've probably had you all sitting now for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes so far. So I think it'll be good if we all do an exercise together to break it up a little bit. And this exercise, I love recommending it to my patients who work by the desk and sit a fair bit. And what this exercise does is you're opening up your upper body and taking yourself away from a slumped position. So it's called the YWLT exercise because you're going to be putting yourself in the letters of the position. So let me show you. So stand up nice and tall. I hope you can see me. All right. So standing up nice and tall, firstly you're going to do is put up arms up like a Y. And you're going to hold this letter for 15 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Next letter is W, like this. And you're just going to gently, ever so slightly, squeeze your shoulder blades a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The next letter is L, one's backwards, the other's not. And you're just going to squeeze a little bit. And you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And the last letter, my favorite, is T. Just want to open up your arms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's it. So it's 15 seconds each letter times by 4, 60 seconds in total, which is 1 minute. It doesn't take very long at all. And I would recommend you do this at least 3 times a day. If you do sit for work, You want to do it every time you have a break, really, and that should be approximately at least every hour. I hope you guys enjoyed that exercise. Alrighty, so that was something that you can do physically, and I've given you an exercise physically, but what I want to do next is I actually want to pick your brain a little bit. So I want to do a mini quiz. It's just one question. So my question for you tonight is, if you had a small rock in your shoe and it was causing you terrible, annoying, and relentless pain to your foot as you walked, what would you do? Would you would you limp, and would you try to avoid putting pressure on your foot? Would you B, place a cushion in your shoe to reduce the discomfort? Would you C, take a painkiller to stop the pain and numb the sensation? Or would you D, take your shoe off and remove the small rock? Please type in the comment in the chat box what your answer is. D, but my doctor tells me to take a painkiller. Yeah. Of course it's D. It's so obvious that the answer is D, because with A, B, and C, all you're doing is you are treating the effect, right? The effect is the pain. But with D, you're addressing the cause, and therefore, if you're addressing the cause, it will help with the effect as well. So it's all about looking at the root cause. And more often than not, vertebral subluxation is the cause of many conditions, including migraine. So therefore, what I'd love to encourage you to do, if you're getting adjusted already, that's awesome. Well done to you. But if you haven't yet, I'd really recommend you to have your spine and nervous system checked for subluxation. If you are interested in having an appointment, give us a call or email us. You can call us at 6299-2660, or you can email us at info@provolutionhealth.com.au. So we're also on a lot of social media. Please feel free to like us on Facebook at Provolution Health, or even on YouTube. We post quite regularly, and it's all about serving the community and enhancing patients' health by, first of all, I think it's important that patients understand their health so they can be more proactive and take initiative and be responsible for it. But yeah, once again, if you do have any questions, at all, or if you're interested in the diary that I was speaking about earlier, reach out via email or contact us on our phone number 6299-2660. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and joining us tonight. I really hope that you've learned something new. And if there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to reach out. All right. Good night, everyone. I'm going to stop the share and stop recording. All right. Good night.